Hi, I'm Liz Larson with The Art of Frosting, and as you can see, I'm not in my usual studio today. I'm back in LA in Leah's Crazy Cake Lab. So, Autumn Bartels and Lavender from my Facebook page, two great cake artists, have asked me to do some overpiping, or what's actually called the Lambeth method. So today I'm going to show a few of the techniques for how to do the Lambeth method. Now I'm not going to have time to teach every one of these techniques, so if you're new and you want to learn how to do each one of these borders, go to curious.com and you can find me there. There's a 10-lesson complete beginner's cake decorating course. Or here on my channel, if you search through, you can find each and every one of these borders. So I'm also going to do an accessory with white candy melt because we've been having so much fun with that lately, and I wanted to tie it in to the holiday season. So there's lots to do here. Let's get started. I'm starting with my image of my deer, and I just had Leah sketch these out for me, but you can look up on Google Images and print them out, even resize them. So I found this one. We even sketched it out just a little bigger, you can see here. And we used just a few different choices to see what we really wanted. Next, I'm just going to cover that over with my small piece of parchment. Now, you want to make 3 or 4, maybe even 5 of these because they do break. Tack it down ever so slightly, and I am using some candy melt here, blue. You could do this with any color. You could make them in Christmas colors. Now, a lot of people who don't live in the States have asked me about candy melt. It's basically just white chocolate, and you would want to color this, if you're just using white chocolate, with candy food coloring, so an oil-based food coloring. Start with your antlers. And you just want to make sure that everything touches so that you'll have a little bit of extra strength. You're just going to follow this all the way around using a dropped line technique. That means lifting your tip up off the table and just letting that line drop. Now, your candy melt will just continue to flow out, so you have to lift your bag off and tilt it away to keep it from flowing, or put your finger over it to stop the flow. Once you have your outline down, just let it sit for a second, and we're going to fill it in with white candy melt. So I just learned something kind of fun and interesting. With this, I'm using a number 4 writing tip in a plastic bag. Now you can't stick these back in the microwave, and sometimes they will get a plug at the end and you need to warm it up. So what I did was I used the hairdryer. I heated up my tip and it worked perfectly. Next, I'm actually going to use just a paper bag filled with white, and you want to just use the same drop line technique. Fill in these small spaces, and you want it to be thick but not too thick. The problem is that you need it to flow nicely, be thin enough to still look pretty, but thick enough to be stable. So here's the color flow technique I want to show you. Fill it in. You see there's a little bit of space there. Use a little very sharp tipped skewer and just fill that in. Let it flow in and cover all the spots. And we'll just continue on. We'll fill the rest of this in. We're going to set it aside for 15 minutes or more if you're just going to leave it out, or just 5 minutes in the refrigerator. One last bit. While your white candy melt is still wet, you want to stick a lollipop skewer in there. These are paper. You can use a wooden one if you want, but just make sure it's actually in your white candy melt. It'll harden in there. And that's how we're going to place them on our cake. For this method, we need an assortment of things. You want a couple of bags with couplers in them. The reason is you're going to want to switch out, and you don't want to have a million bags lying around. So you're going to want to switch out tips. I have a 124 rose tip and a 104 rose tip. I have a 22 star tip as well as an 18 star tip. I have a 4, a 5, and a 6 writing tip. So the idea is that we're going to use lots of shapes and sizes, and we want to have them available. I'm going to start by marking the top of my cake with a 5-inch pan. You could do this with a cake board, you could do it with just measuring. I just want to mark so I have an idea of where I'm going to place my inner borders on top. That's my first mark. The next marks I want to make are for my garlands, and these are just a guide so that I'm sure they're kind of even. So start by making a cross on your cake, just the top, so you kind of have your even, and then go in, mark directly in between those. So I have a good idea of where my garlands are going to be so that they're nice and even. I took just a little bit of time to draw out what I wanted. I know I'm going to be doing garlands and swirls over that. I know that I want to do some string work and some garlands here. I also sketched out how I want it to look on the side of my cake. This is a good way to use this method so you have a good idea of what you're going to do before you start. I'm starting with a blue base, which I've airbrushed, but you can certainly ice it this way. A lot of the Lambeth or the overpiped cakes were done with a colored base so that the borders really stood out. So we're going to start with our garland right on the top edge. So many of these cakes have a really full top edge. So we'll do garland all the way around the top, and that's with my number 18. Next we want to use our same number 18 with a bag that's half blue and half white. We've used our color striping, and we're going to do an S shape. We're going to come up above the garland just slightly. We're going to use a heavy hand here, heavy pressure, very even pressure, and come down and circle around just there. Next, I'm going to move down to the base. So right here in between, I want to put string work, and I need a base for that. So I just want to take a larger tip, a number 22 tip, and I'm just going to create a crescent. So this is going to be the anchor for my string work, and then we will eventually put a border over the top of that as well. Next, I want to create a reverse shell or an upside down shell. I'm just going to let that build and bring it down, and a rosette underneath. So I'm going to have that all the way around, build, bring it down, and rosette. We want to now drop our string work. Now I want to very carefully create a rosette, a reverse shell here on the side, and then come back in and create a garland in front. Now be very careful here because you are highly likely to damage your string work. But we want the layer to go on top of our cage of string work here. Well, we have our 124 rose tip out. We're going to go ahead and start our top treatment, which is just a flat garland. Next step is to create one more layer. Now this is really the overpiped method. It is doing the same technique over and over and creating layers and layers and layers. So I'm going to go around this at least 4 times. Okay, I've gone around the center 4 times, and now I'm going to come in with my number 18 and just make a little rosette, U and rosette, just to finish off that edge. So that's 5 layers just on the top. Just when you thought there couldn't be any more layers, we're going to come back in with, this is our number 8 writing tip, and we're just going to follow along on top of our S curve here. This is the real hallmark of the Lambeth method, or the overpiping method, is overpiping over and over and over again. I'd like to come back in now and just do some dot work here inside from larger to smaller. And I'm going to also stack that at least 2 high. I notice I've still got some marks here that are from my marking, so I'm just going to add some dot work there and fill that right in. I'm going to add one more layer here, which is a mock string work around the top of this garland. I promised you guys an accessory that would tie this into our holiday season. So I've got my first reindeer. I'm going to put, let me decide here where I want my front. Right about there. Use my scissors as a guide. Guide him down in. There's the first one. Now I decided to do 3. You could leave it at 1. Here's number 2. Now I like to use the back sides of these rather than the front, but you could easily do the front. I like the smoothness that it gives, and I did my outline first, so I've got a nice even line all the way out. There we go. Now I need a few of these little circles here with white candy melt, and I am just going to add a tiny touch of candy melt to the back of those. And I want to camouflage my stick just a little here. So what do you think? Autumn and lavender, lavender? Is this what you were looking for? This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing it. I think this is really the first time that I've gone out and done this many layers, but that's what you wanted. That's the overpiping. That's the Lambeth method. Find me on Facebook at The Art of Frosting. Join the conversation and please send me the pictures of your cakes. You can find me on my blog, www.theartoffrosting.blogspot.com. You can find me now at curious.com. And there's lots more to come. Hope you guys have a wonderful holiday season. We'll see you all again really soon.